We're always a bit deficient in magnesium. Sleep is probably the most impactful. HRT is not the bringer of death and doom. Biggest question that's always asked is, will HRT give me breast cancer? The ability to recover, your muscle recovery, so much more challenging.
Okay, so Jane, you are a best-selling author, you're a menopause educator and a campaigner. I've stolen this from your website, removing the fear and confusion around menopause and HRT. But for the listeners, and also for my own benefit again, look, how did you actually end up here?
Taken my shine away from my intro. That was it. That's my intro. But yeah, that's off my website. How did I get here? It's a long story, Rob, but I'll just cut it really, really short. So I was perimenopausal when I was about 37, and those who are listening will be going, oh my God, that's way too young. That's not possible. I promise you it is. I didn't know it, was brain foggy, angry, tired, more than tired, fatigued, low mood, all the things that we know about menopause and perimenopause, and was dismissed by my doctor many times. So I got to the age of about, I think, 39, 40. Finally, I think I had a conversation with one doctor who said, okay, yes, we'll try HRT, but of course you're high risk of cancer, of breast cancer. And I just went, am I though? I said, is that true? And she said, oh yes, definitely. You'll almost definitely get breast cancer. And I went, okay. So I said, I'll take the HRT. Thank you very much. And I went off and I thought, I need to get myself educated because this is not working for me. And I knew people who'd been on HRT, and my mum had been on HRT, and she said it was, it really helped her. So long story short, I then became educated and spent a long time looking into hormones, menopause, perimenopause, and HRT. And from then on, Menopausal Not Mad was born. I can't remember exactly when I thought of the name, but then I just realised I'd found something that not only was of personal interest to me, but was of huge interest and help to other women. And here we are. The rest is history, as they say. And I've never really stopped talking about menopause since then. So yeah, I'm quite boring to listen to most of the time, Rob, to be fair.
I don't think so. But what are you doing now then? So fast forward to now. So as I said, you've obviously written a fantastic book. You're a menopause educator, but you've been through this whole journey. What's your role now, would you say?
Yeah, it changes actually quite a lot. I started off just doing a few little one-to-one chats with women to help them understand what they were going through, what they could ask for, what they shouldn't be doing, what they should be doing, just giving them options really, which is really what most people want. They just want options. They don't want to be told, no, you can't do that. We don't want you doing that. We're not even going to give you that as an option. So I started off very small with that, and I've grown the service to a point where I was doing so many one-to-one appointments every day. I was doing about 10 a day, which anybody that works one-to-one or in support roles will understand that's exhausting. Each appointment being, about an hour long, and then you've got your follow-on reports afterwards. So I've scaled that down now because I've actually taught, I had an HRT educator program, which I ran to bring in more women to do what I do. So I've taught a number of women to do what I do. So they're out there doing their thing, not necessarily connected with me, but just getting the message out there. Some are still connected with me. I wrote my book, which I absolutely love, and I'm writing another book, not necessarily just on menopause and HRT, but surrounding the well-being of women as we age. And now I'm moving slightly. Some people might think it's slightly in a backwards way, but it's not. For me, it's a real step forward. I'm now moving slightly out of the online world, although I'll still be in the online world, but I'm stepping out into much more face-to-face events and just getting in front of people, because although I love my online work and I absolutely love all my clients, it's been a great journey from my 30s, late 30s up to now. I really miss that face-to-face, seeing the whites of somebody's eyes, that clinic environment. So I'm going to be doing some work in my local area, in the Leicestershire area, in a wellness clinic, and I'm arranging some events, and as well as doing the online stuff and writing books, writing resources, blogging, podcasts, all the things that everybody does, but only the things that I enjoy. And hopefully those things will be of help to everybody who takes an interest in what I have to say.
Loads of exciting stuff. And I do think we run in-person events as well as online like you're doing. And I think the blend is important because people get such a buzz from coming to our event and seeing other people, and you don't connect in the same way. I know it's a bit of a tangent, but I don't think people connect in the same way, even though we have online communities, and you've built really big online communities. I know really big, thriving ones. When they meet in person, it's something different. I don't know. Have you seen that happen as well when you bring groups together? I've definitely
seen that happen, and I love that. Do you know, it's interesting because I feel as if I've grown as a person over the last few years as well. And a friend of mine who's in my community, but she's become a friend over the years. We've actually been on holiday together twice, and she's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. But she even, apart from my husband, obviously, I throw that in, a best friend that I've ever met online. I mean, she's just brilliant. And she said to me when we were away, the second time we'd met in person, and she said, "I'm loving the way that you've grown, Jane, and the way that you're growing, not just how you help women, but also how you've grown as a person." Because I'll be honest with you, Rob, I'm quite feisty, and I've always, my whole of my life, and I know you'll understand this, the whole of my life, I've been in sort of fight mode. Quite a complex upbringing, and nothing terrible, no abuse or anything, but quite complex, moving house all the time. And I was always the new girl at school, and I was always in fight mode. So I was quite feisty when I first started doing this, and I am still quite feisty because it's my favourite topic, and when I'm campaigning specifically. But these last few years, and particularly the last year, because the year before I'd had some horrible things happening in my business. People did not behave well. You know all the details of that, Rob. We don't need to go into that. But that really gave me a fantastic opportunity to go, yeah, actually I've got opportunity to grow now as a person and to use this to my benefit. And I've realized I actually really do have quite a soft side to me. People who know me might go, "You don't show that very often, Jane," but it's there. And I've noticed from the reviews from people, and when people have very kindly said, reviewed their experience with me, they've said really nice things about how giving I am, and sort of soft in my way of helping them. And I thought, really? Is that me they're talking about? What are they saying? And the in-person element gives that extra opportunity to, I love a little cuddle, just to, meet people, give them a little squeeze. And even, I went to see my PT today, and he just puts his little arms out. We have a little squeeze, and I love that. I love that interaction because it just sets you up for the day, having that face-to-face. And I know this sounds a bit creepy, Rob, and it's not meant to, but just the smell of people, just to kind of connect with them, because we are driven by visuals and by the smell of people and what they feel like. And you don't get that online. That sounded creepy, but you know what I mean. If somebody's got
I can definitely relate. Yeah.
Oh God, I remember that person. They smelt amazing,
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? That COVID has kind of took everyone one way, and then people are kind of going back towards doing more in-person connection. And I think it's really important to have a bit of both as a business owner and as a person. Being part of communities, just being online is quite isolating, I think, and lonely in the long run.
It really is. And I thought that I quite enjoyed all of the COVID lockdown thing, which I know is probably not the best way to put it. Enjoyed being the wrong word. I wasn't offended by having to stay inside all the time. And I built the majority of my community whilst we were in lockdown, as many people did. But it's almost like we've forgotten how to be together. And it's like you say, it's lovely to step back into that. I know you know this because you do this yourself. Just step back into that, and for people to see the real you, wrinkles and all. We turn up and they can see that we get tired like everybody else. We're not these shiny people that they see on, not that I pretend to be shiny, by the way, on social media. As I said, I often do my lives in my pajamas, but they can see that we're just normal. And that's actually the message that I've always wanted to get across, is that I'm literally the most average person on the planet. It doesn't matter that I've written a book. It doesn't matter that I teach thousands of women about menopause. I literally have the same problems as everybody else. I have the same worries, the same anxieties. I'm tired at the end of every day and fall asleep on the sofa, dribbling into my dressing gown. So, and that's what women want. They want not to be recognised as normal, as the same, not the same as everybody else, but you know what I mean, having the same issues as everybody else, and that it's not unusual for them to feel a bit rubbish. But we can do something about that. I cannot bear it when people are told by whoever it is, whether it's a doctor or not, oh, this is just a normal part of aging, or this is just normal. Oh, well, you're just a woman, so that's, get used to your pain every month because endometriosis doesn't exist. That's a whole another conversation, etc. All of those things that women are told, that actually they often believe. I was one of those women that would believe all the things I was told, never thought to challenge it. And you don't have to be feisty to challenge something. You can just say, I hear you, but actually I think I'll go down this route. This suits me better. So that's my job, is to empower women to do that.
I'm smiling because it's the same kind of motivation, just a slightly different area of people saying it all goes to pot around menopause. Your body's going to go to pot, you're just going to gain weight, it's inevitable. And all we hear from so many women in that situation, and it fires you up when that doesn't have to be, as you said, it may not be perfect. There may be things that change, but it doesn't have to be half as bad as most people think. So what's in your space, what's like the biggest misconceptions or myths that you're hearing still around menopause, perimenopause?
The one that most women are triggered by, I don't really like the word triggered, but I can't think of a better one at the moment. The most women are triggered by, and the biggest question that's always asked is, will HRT give me breast cancer? That's the biggest question. It's almost a menopause 101 question. So I definitely don't shy away from the tough questions. I don't actually know the answer to all the questions, by the way. Sometimes I will say, I'm not sure, let me just check for you. But the difference is I know where to go for valid and well-researched answers instead of just Googling it on some random site. And please, anybody listening to this, watching this, never Google, will HRT give me breast cancer? Because I promise you, you will run screaming from your computer down the road and never look at HRT again, because most of the stuff that's on Google and most of the people you talk to will still be saying HRT gives you breast cancer. That is not the case. There's a much bigger story around that, of course, but just to very, very briefly summarize that, estrogen does not cause breast cancer. There is some reasonably good evidence now that indicates that the link with breast cancer and HRT is potentially synthetic progesterone or progestins. So if, for example, any of the people listening to this are taking a nice transdermal estrogen gel or patch, for example, or spray, and have a micronized progesterone, which in our country, in the UK, is called Utrogestan. In other countries, you'll often have a generic version, and there's a good one called Prometrium, just for those in the States. If you're taking that progesterone and that estrogen, that is top notch. You don't have an increased breast cancer risk. If you're taking something that's combined the two hormones again, that has a synthetic progesterone in it, for example, a combined patch, which has both progesterone and estrogen in it, there is apparently, not fully researched yet, but there is some indication that there's a slightly increased breast cancer risk because of the progesterone. And I literally want to boil my head when people say estrogen needs to be cleansed from the body, estrogen's bad for you. I'm estrogen dominant. I can't bear that phrase, estrogen dominance. I'm estrogen dominant. That's why I'm so poorly. It's not. There's nothing wrong with estrogen. I'll get off my soapbox now, Rob.
No, I thought that was great. And I know this kind of started because my mum was scared by it, the Women's Health Initiative. Is it WHI study?
Well done, you.
Yeah, and I know some of this. But I'm learning more here from you because I didn't know. I've seen the stats. Davina McCall did that TV program, and the stats was like something in 20. What was it? Was it 20 in 1,000 women or something might have a high risk of breast cancer from estrogen?
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know the exact numbers.
Now, no, the stats have changed.
That's all changed. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
I wouldn't say all changed, but I think there have been updated stats. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a massive stats person, but the key message is that women, very sadly, get breast cancer, as do men, separate conversation. But women get breast cancer, and there is no evidence that taking a good HRT regime increases your risk of breast cancer. And if just to recommend, I won't recommend my book, although obviously my book's amazing, but there's a book here which I'm just going to get down because I've got the updated version of it.
I've got it as well. Estrogen Matters.
Estrogen Matters.
I will show it off and try and not knock all my bookshelf off.
This book, have you got the updated one, Rob?
No, I think I've got the old one.
Yeah, so I've read that, which obviously is amazing.
Yeah.
Page 10 is the best because there's a really good quote in there, which I can't
page 10. I will put my bookmark in there.
10, I'm not in this version because I've got the recently updated one now, where he says, Dr. Avram Blooming says something like, if estrogen were I'm not quoting directly here, but if estrogen were the primary cause of breast cancer, then why are older women who are postmenopausal the women who most commonly have breast cancer? You would then assume it would be younger women who are coursing with their estrogen, pre-perimenopausal, etc. There's no logic in that. And I haven't read all of this yet, but this is the updated version of that. And there is, even those who've had breast cancer, and I'm not a breast cancer expert and I'm not a doctor, but even those who've had breast cancer, many of them will choose to continue taking HRT because their quality of life is so much improved. And again, unless there is a really clear reason not to, there is no, I think the stats indicate there is no increased risk of death by adding in HRT post-breast cancer. I've probably quoted that completely wrong, but ultimately the message being that HRT is not the bringer of death and doom. And denying women the option to take HRT is actually quite cruel because Rob, because you see women all the time in the fitness world, women can really suffer. And then their partners, male or female partners, also suffer, because of course it has that knock-on effect of, quality of life and all that.
And I think from my perspective, you have to take a holistic view on all these things. Everything's a trade-off. There's not necessarily a one size fits all solution to anything, but I've had clients who are really struggling with energy, motivation, and I've seen them go from being really quite consistent and motivated to getting really good results. I had one client in particular, Rav, who I remember that I interviewed her on the podcast, and it's on our site somewhere in the results page. She had like a good run of it, and then suddenly she wasn't motivated anymore. She was really tired. She was struggling even to function at work. She was not motivated. She didn't want to get out of bed. It also coincided with winter, which obviously can make a lot of us, I really don't enjoy winter and find it very difficult. And then she investigated different types of HRT. I think had to try a couple of things. And then she kind of came back as the same person she was before in terms of the motivation and the energy and the will to want to stick to something. Do you see that happen with people as well?
100%. And just in my own personal experience, and my experience actually mirrors so many women. I remember I also tried lots of different HRTs, and I'm so pleased that I didn't give up, but I was given the wrong HRT to begin with and had to bleed for 10 weeks on the trot with no breaks, obviously was then deficient in iron and et cetera, et cetera. Finally persevered, got onto the gel and the tablets I've just mentioned, the Eutrogestin tablets with the transdermal gel. And it was, for me, it's different for everybody, but for me, 3 days into that, my husband said, "Oh my God, you're back." He said, "There you are." And I went, "I know." I said, "I just feel, I mean, it's not perfect. Like we've said, you know, I was still in my 40s and now I'm in my 50s. I haven't suddenly become a 20-year-old, you know, and in the same shape as I was. But your ability, and certainly in my case and all the women I've worked with, your ability to cope with life stresses and strains and to deal with illness and to fight off illness and to not be ill in the first place, are often down to your hormone balance. If I'm not on HRT, and this would apply to most of the women I work with, I cannot function, or my quality of life is severely reduced. And yes, I see it all the time. And what's heartbreaking is that many women, because they're still now being given incorrect information about HRT, like you have to go off it after 5 years. As soon as your periods stop, you need to go off it. You can't be on it beyond the age of 60. All those things and more. They will stop their HRT and then they feel horrific. But they're saying, "Oh, but I'm told I can't take HRT." And hopefully they'll come to me or somebody like me. And then I will tell them, actually, if you want to, you can. And this is what you can take safely. And it really is life-changing for some women. And I've got loads of really heartfelt reviews, not just of me, but of HRT in my book, where women have said, I literally had nothing left. There was nothing of me. And then I started my HRT and my life has returned. And from a fitness perspective, you will know that, you know, the ability to recover, your muscle recovery is so much more challenging when somebody's postmenopausal or even perimenopausal. And I find if I am balanced now and I've had a hysterectomy, so I don't really need to change anything. But I find that if I haven't been balanced, I can't do any weight training at all. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not weight training like every day, like perhaps many people you know, but I go to twice a week at least. I find if my hormones are out of balance, just can't do it. And some women get to the point where they can't even get out of bed, which is just ridiculous when it's such an easy thing to solve.
Imagine living in a home that you've cherished for years.
You've done your best to keep it in good condition,
But no matter how much you clean, paint, or repair,
the problems keep piling up.
the cracks are showing, the roof is leaking, and it feels like everything is getting worse despite your best efforts.
For many women, losing weight around menopause feels just like that,
You've tried diets, workouts, and advice,
but the results don't come and the frustration keeps growing.
That's where our Fit Over 40 private coaching program comes in.
Think of us as your expert renovation team.
We know exactly how to fix the root issues, rebuild your confidence, and create lasting results, just like restoring a home to its best condition.
If you're ready to finally see results that last, click the link in the description below now. Let us help you restore the body and the life you deserve. And it can ruin people's, I've spoken to people whose careers have ended over that. And, you know, the cost is when, first of all, it looks like there isn't an increased breast cancer risk if you're taking the right thing.
No, absolutely.
But the cost is so much more. I think people only ever people are quite risk averse, aren't they? And they only look at there's that tiny or not even a risk, but there's the fear mongering out there. But they're not looking at the cost of not having it, which is like maybe you'll lose your job, maybe your relationship. Like loads of people go through divorces, don't they, around menopause as well? Or
yeah, definitely, it's a big thing.
Can't find another relationship because they're not feeling good in themselves. They can't sleep, so they have no energy. Like I think sleep is a huge one. Let's touch on that.
Sleep is big, actually, and I'm actually taking a course on sleep at the moment because I find it really interesting. And I generally don't have too much problem sleeping. Except when the cat bounces on my head in the middle of the night. But yeah, sleep is, you'll know this in your own community, Rob, that sleep is probably the most impactful. So even if it's something simple, like a woman is struggling to have a full night's sleep because she needs to get up for a wee twice, 3 times in the night, which is such a common story, that then leads to being tired in the morning, you're not functioning, you're feeling a bit brain foggy, you're not doing well at work, perhaps you're a bit snappy with your partner. It just all leads to other stuff, other symptoms of the fact that you could probably have just taken a nice, easy to use vaginal estrogen and you wouldn't want to pee yourself all the time. And the number of women who are told, oh, it's completely normal to leak or to pee yourself or to not quite make it to the toilet in time once you get to a certain age. Yeah, well, it's common, but it's not normal. And I don't want women to just accept that that's okay. And I did have a bit of a go at one client in the nicest way, where she said I was asking, I was saying, how you feeling, what your symptoms, etc. And then she said, oh, well, it was just sort of a throwaway comment when she said, oh, well, of course, I leak and often don't make it to the toilet in time. And I went, well, hang on, stop. And she said, well, that's normal, isn't it? She said, I've had a couple of kids and, I'm in my late 40s now. And I went, and that's okay. You happy with that? And she said, well, no, obviously not. But I was just told that's the way it is. And I said, it absolutely doesn't have to be that way. Of course, there's pelvic floor exercises and all that, but, and that's not my area of expertise, but it's still really, really important. But your hormones are really important in helping make sure that bladder, which has so many estrogen receptors on the neck of your bladder, that bladder is just crying out for some help. And that's what it's doing. It's basically over irritated and over agitated, hence you peeing yourself. And don't get me started, Rob, on those, not that I'm letting you speak at all, but on those adverts for, I'm not going to mention the name because I don't want to be sued, but if I hear that advert where it says, I think the words are, a little bit of pee isn't going to stop me being me, I literally can't stay in the room. I cannot bear it, because what it does is it normalizes it for women. Instead of saying, if you've got a problem, of course, we have this facility, these pads, but you could go to your doctor and get some vaginal estrogen and give that a go and see if that'll help. And then we'd have all our options available. Whereas women just think, oh, it's fine, I'm going to pee myself. I'll just wear a great big pad for the rest of my life. No. That's
why I think these conversations and what you do is so important, because who's telling people it's normal, do you think, or not giving people solutions it should be?
It's a multitude of avenues it comes from. So doctors are becoming a lot more savvy about menopause, but there's still way too many medics telling people giving people incorrect information. Of course, we talk to people in our family and our friendship groups who have been given the incorrect information, and they're then passing that on to us. And of course, then you have the companies that are trying to sell us things. So the whole meno washing thing just drives me insane. And some of the larger companies are very much at fault for that. And of course, women, particularly anybody, not just women actually, but particularly when we're vulnerable, we're feeling poorly, we will literally take anything. I've done it myself in the old days. I've popped any old supplement just to feel better. And that costs a fortune and it does nothing. So, but these companies, like the sanitary pad companies, for urinary incontinence, they would be one example of a company that they're not interested in you getting better, because if you get better, you don't need their product. Well, that's not acceptable. I would rather have that product from a company, but also have the right information. So they're there if I need them and I'm going to recommend them. But actually, I can also give somebody a solution so that they don't need said product. There'll be plenty of women who will need the product for other reasons, post-childbirth, maybe immediately after childbirth, if you had an operation, if you've got specific gynae challenges that are nothing to do with hormones. There's still a need for the product, but not for a menopausal woman that just needs estrogen. That's not what it's for. So that, yeah, we're kind of being hammered from all angles. And all I want is for people to be given the options and the choices so they can make their own decision. That's all. It's not much to ask, really.
No, and I can see the incentives of a lot of companies is not to solve the root cause of the problem. It's to, like you said, it's to let the problem continue so that they can cash in on the problem. It's kind of like a lot of diets don't really, I don't know whether this is thought through or not, but they don't solve any of the root causes. You know, they give a really quick fix that leads to muscle loss, bone loss, all these things which are really dangerous and bad for you, but they want you to see quick results. And then you'll go, oh, that diet works. Well, I hear this from a lot of people. And then they go, they stop it, they gain the weight back, and then they go back on it because they go, well, it did work. And it's like, well, I don't think it did work because you're in a worse state after it than you were before.
I saw today, actually, and I won't mention her name, but there's a famous person, a well-known person who's been taking Ozempic.
I was going to bring that one up as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw a really worrying photo of her today. And I just thought she'd gone from being a little bit overweight, I think, not much, and to looking really, really good. And I think initially had lost weight relatively gradually and healthily to what's happening now. And I just thought that is so dangerous. I am not a weight loss expert, but that would scare the bejesus out of me if I started to lose weight at that rate. Because once that Ozempic or whatever the brand names are around that, once that is stopped, as you said, Rob, the problem hasn't been solved. You'll either be unhealthy from the result of having taken the product, or you're just going to go back to being overweight anyway because your body's going to be craving the nutrition. So you're likely to be heavier than you were to start with, as I'm sure you know. Well, you obviously know.
That is what all the research shows, is you have to take it forever. And if you want the weight to come off, which is either very expensive for you or the NHS, but you'll also lose all your muscle and bone density if you don't know what you're doing around it, which most people don't in terms of nutrition, training. And then you end up in quite a bad, unhealthy place, like you said. And you see, I'm seeing more and more celebrities on telly and things. This isn't a female one, but is it Matt from Busted? We saw them at Pub in the Park, which is an event in Marlow where I went to school. And he looked completely different when we saw him on TV last week. Gaunt, like his face is like, it's almost unrecognizable. And I said to Lucy, that is 100%, because we're seeing it in a lot of celebrities. That's one of the weight loss drugs, whichever one it is.
Yeah, there are a few brands, actually. Yeah. I've just used the name of the one that I know.
Ozempic's a well-known one.
And I think there's a place for things
we
like
have
that.
clients taking it who where it does make sense when they have tried everything.
Completely get that. Yeah. And that almost like a kickstart, isn't it, really? But then we have to look at the bigger picture, don't we? And even my PT, he doesn't manage my intake of nutrition because I don't allow him to, but he'd love to. But he's really against that sort of thing, purely because, as you say, the whole muscle mass, particularly for women in menopause who are menopausal, the whole muscle strength and muscle mass thing is so important. And I know this probably isn't the right attitude, but I'd rather be a little bit fatter. I am a bit overweight at the moment, so a little bit weightier, but actually be stronger. And the buzz phrase going round is strong, not skinny, which I really like because that just sums it up. I'd rather be a little bit overweight, but be strong. Because that just seems logical.
It's more empowering. I know we've said before that word's a bit cliche or a bit overused now, but it is a bit. What we see is the strength. People don't realize quite what it will give them, so you kind of have to spell it out, because I think people think muscle or strength that you'll look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's not that. It's like walking with your family and there's a hill. The muscle strength is what gets you up the hill without getting out of breath. Not being lighter can help a bit as well, but a lot of it's the strength. So if you're jogging or walking, you can get up the hill or the flight of stairs at work without getting out of breath.
Yes.
You won't fall, you won't roll your ankle as much. It's all these things that people don't think about. Or you can join in, sports with your kids. You can pick your grandchild up off the floor without hurting your back. It's all those other things that people, I think,
that is really, really important. And I've seen it in my own body in the sense that I realised, where would we been? We'd been on a ferry a few years ago, and I hadn't been doing much to keep fit. And because it was quite, it was swaying a lot, the ferry. It was quite rough out there. I was standing up, but I was having to stabilise myself quite a lot. Otherwise, I'd have fallen over, obviously. And about a week later, maybe a bit less than a week later, I said to my husband, I said, God, my knee is killing me. Long story short, and you'll know the name of the muscle, can't remember it now. Whatever muscle I pulled, strained behind my knee. What's the name of the muscle? Do you know it?
I don't know which one it's going to be. I'm not going to guess. It could be one of the hamstring ones crosses over, or one of the calf ones crosses over. So it'll be one of the other.
I think it's behind my knee, whatever that's called.
There's a few.
whatever it was,
yeah.
It just kind of had gone awry because I wasn't strong enough. My muscles weren't strong enough to cope with that for sort of an hour.
It's a lot of stability.
And, so it took me a long time. It's probably taken me the last year or two to get that back to a good level of strength. But it just shows, obviously I was in my mid-50s then, and it just shows that even the smallest thing, if you're not fit and not strong, can really have an impact. And, I've pulled my back out in the old days, just putting my underwear on in the morning. And that's how silly it is if you're not strong enough, isn't it?
Yeah, strength, mobility, like pulling the plug out the bath is another classic. And I think people assume it's something else, like, oh, I've just got a dodgy back. But we've had so many clients go from constantly hurting themselves and being terrified of hurting themselves, so they want to pick anything up. And, again, it affects quality of life. You can't help out if you're moving house. You can't, carry the shopping. It's really miserable. And then they don't realize it's because from the age of 30, you start losing muscle, you start losing strength. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's like 20 years later, suddenly you start hurting yourself constantly and you can't keep up and everything feels wobbly.
It's interesting. We went a bit over the top though, because my husband and we're doing up a house in Tenerife. And so I'm nearly 58, he's 58. And we thought it'd just be slapping on a bit of paint. And
even that is tiring though, painting.
Well, it is tiring. And I said to Roger, when we last did this, we didn't really have to do much to the last time we bought a house. It was 7 years ago. So we were early 50, just 50 or maybe 51 at the most. And it was tough then, but now we're 7 years older, nearly 8 years older. And we're lugging bags of stones and cement round because loads of work needs doing. And I just said, God, I'm exhausted. But I was pleased that, and we've been realistic about it, because I was pleased we were able to do things, but we've had to just make sure we take lots of rests and make sure we go for walks to stretch and stuff like that. So, but I think if we hadn't concentrated on trying to keep fit, and don't get me wrong, we don't go to the gym all the time. We see a PT a couple of times a week and do a bit of park run and stuff like that. But we do try to keep fit. If we hadn't done that, I'm not sure we could have done any of the stuff that we're doing now. And my office here is 2 flights of stairs up. But I make sure I run up those stairs, because when I can't run up those stairs, then I know that there's a problem. And I need to get to the top of the stairs without being out of breath, being able to get straight into talking. And I can do that still. And those are the things that at my age, women should be aiming to do. It's not that much to ask, I don't think.
No, and I think how you look is a bonus. And it's not, a lot of the people that come to us are going, I don't need to look like I did in my 20s. It's not really about that anymore, but it's about being able to function well, feel good. Yeah. A lot of them do get into better shape than expected, but that's just a byproduct. So let's make sure we continue to talk about menopause stuff. What non-hormonal interventions can people do? So you've talked about you do some different types of exercise. I know nothing really is the same as HRT, but what other things do you think people need to get in a good place or need to look at if they're not feeling great?
Yeah, I think the key one, obviously, we've talked about sleep. I know it's quite elusive for many women, but my nutritionist background makes me want to go down the nutrition route with most women. It's extremely individual, of course. And yes, sometimes supplements are required if somebody's struggling to get a reasonable diet. But I do like people to really look at what they're eating, because I am not perfect with what I eat. I can inhale a bag of Doritos with the best of them, but we need to be sensible. Alcohol is an absolute nightmare for menopausal women because we completely our bodies just processes it completely differently. So most women I talk to say, "Oh no, one glass of wine and that's it. I can't cope." So we need to manage our alcohol. We definitely need to look at what we're eating and not be eating what we were eating 10, 20, 30 years ago. And that doesn't mean you can't have treats. It just means, 5 out of 7 days, be sensible and eat properly. And that being sensible and eating properly is slightly different for everybody. I'm not a fan of diets like keto and all that, but that's not to say it doesn't work for some people. Bit of intermittent fasting here and there. Okay. But I like to, back to what you said when you introduced me about simplifying hormones and HRT, I literally like to simplify everything. So if somebody comes to me for any nutrition advice, I'm not going to be giving them lots and lots of rules. We just tend to go down the route of, what's upset your innards up to this point? How do you respond when you eat? Are you tired after you eat X? Whatever it is. And let's just, what do you like? What do you like to eat? How do you eat? When do you want to eat? And just work it around so that they don't have to change too much. Because I know from my own experience, if you ask me to change everything, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to stick with what I did before because that is too complicated. So it's just, if we can get the nutrition right and we can get the gut health right, then usually the sleep's improved, and depending on what time of day you eat, etc. And of course, that will help balance hormones as well. Supplement wise, we're always a bit deficient in magnesium, so I do tend to recommend a magnesium supplement. That really helps with sleep.
Me
as well.
too.
I'm sure you.
What magnesium do you usually recommend? I'm intrigued. Like, it doesn't, not brand, but like what type of magnesium?
Yeah, I've been through lots of magnesiums, and I tend to go with magnesium glycinate because it's kinder on the tummy, which I'm sure you know. And I quite like an effervescent, stick it in a
like a Barocca.
Yeah, something like a Barocca, that sort of thing.
Not Barocca, let's just clarify.
No, sorry, not Barocca. That's but like a great
tablet.
Big tablet that you put in water. And the reason I personally like that, and I tend to recommend that style, is because it forces us to drink more water then. Because a lot of us just have, the tiniest bit of water with a little tablet. So it does force me to have, and forces my clients to have more water. And of course, it digests a bit more easily as well. A lot of women who are menopausal have gut issues because of the reduced slowing down of their gut transition when they're low in estrogen. So I try to avoid piling in any extra tablets that we don't need to. Hence, again, the effervescent approach tends to work quite well. And omega-3, really good, anti-inflammatory, excellent. What's the other one? Oh, and vitamin D, if you think you're a bit deficient. Yeah, vitamin D and calcium. If you think you're deficient, you might not need a supplement for vitamin D. if you I tend to take vitamin D here in the UK. When I'm working over in Tenerife, I don't bother because obviously it's sunny. So, and I'm not, got polar necks, up to my chin because it's warmer. So it's just less important then. But yeah, it's a very individual thing. But I think nutrition for me has to be absolutely top notch, top of the list.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with all of those. Those are the same supplements we would recommend. Vitamin D every winter. For most of our clients work at a desk all day. They're not getting many steps or much sunlight. So it's like we have to try and get them moving a bit more. And usually the vitamin D for so many things. Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, if people are getting ill all the time, so magnesium, vitamin D can help with immunity, then you can't be consistent with work. You can't be consistent with exercise again. I think it's all about, people get so hung up on the specifics of like, what exact workout should I do? Which can be important, but it's like, or like, what exact, really specific nutrition thing, should I have this or that? And actually they're not sticking to any of it consistently because they're tired, they're ill all the time, they've got no energy. And we tend to start with those, those pieces.
Yeah. And also another element on that note is the stress levels, and mindset. It plays a big part. And I focused quite a lot on that in the last perhaps 18 months or so. I took a certification in trauma-informed coaching, which was very helpful. I find that, and I've experienced it myself, but often with my clients, I find that if our stress levels are really high, and obviously cortisol levels are high for that reason, then we're obviously hormones are going to be all over the place, and you're going to feel worse, and you're more susceptible to disease. So it's important, perhaps, when we're looking at when you're looking at introducing something new like HRT or changing something from a nutrition perspective, it's important to perhaps start with, okay, what actually is going on for me? Is there something extra that's stressing me out? Are the children poorly? Am I going through a divorce? Somebody died in the family? And I remember my own experience. This was when I was in my early 40s, when my mum passed away. It was relatively quick, obviously very stressful. I was quite involved in those last few weeks. And I was buzzing around, just doing all the things I do. And I think it was before I was properly sorted and had HRT. So it must have been very early 40s. And when she passed away, and I'd do all the things that you do, sort the funeral, etc., stress levels were so much higher than even I had realised. And I probably spent the next 10 months with some illness or other. I had tooth abscesses. I ended up with various skin problems. I was struggling to sleep. I had flu. I had colds, and I was just constantly ill. And that was purely down to stress. That was actually nothing to do with anything that was going on other than my stress levels. So once I started to take care of myself and acknowledge that I needed a bit of time to grieve and to get over it, then things started to pick up. And of course, then I started on HRT as well, just coincidentally. But actually HRT wasn't the thing that fixed me initially. It was acknowledging the stress and changing my whole mindset. And that sounds a bit woo-woo, which isn't me, but it wasn't like that. It was a very practical thing. Just thinking, okay. In fact, I do remember taking a week once I'd acknowledged that I wasn't coping very well, because I'm one of life's copers, as a lot of us are. I just took a week off for work. I can't remember what work I was doing at the time. Spent a week wandering around the house in my dressing gown, crying and feeling sorry for myself. And then at the end of that week, from a mindset perspective, I got myself sorted, got myself dressed, looking like a normal human again. And I said out loud, right, enough now, we're done. And I just got on with it after that. And that doesn't mean I'd forgotten that my mum had passed away. It just meant there was closure and I could move on. And it did make a really big difference. That was all sounding very spiritual. It's not meant to. But yeah.
I don't think it sounded quite practical the way I can relate, because I'm quite similar with grief and things. But some people take a lot longer. I think what I've learned is all the stuff we talked about today, everyone's different. The root cause of what's going on, how they manage stress, whether they're a coper or whether it all comes out. I think this is where the one-to-one, as much as we said, we can only do so much, but it's so valuable because everyone is in a different situation. I think the challenge is kind of, a lot of people just get lumped into the same bucket, right? The type of HRT that might work for them is going to be different. The type of supplements they need is different. Yeah. The challenges they have with nutrition could be completely different from the next person. We've run through a lot today. I'm conscious of the time, but where can people go if they do want to get more help from you? What are the few different resources that you've got at the moment that people can kind of benefit from if they are struggling with anything around menopause that you can help with?
Of course. I still do some one-to-ones, but you can find most of what I do on menopausalnotmad.co.uk. I'm also on Instagram as Menopausal Not Mad, although probably under Jane Pangbourne as well, and on Facebook under Menopausal Not Mad. And I have a private members community which is called the Female Health Forum, and people can join that from my website for just £9 a month. And obviously they can buy my book, which is there.
Loads of awesome resources. And I'll drop links to all of that in the show notes. We'll make sure everyone who's watching can go and find those things. So just to wrap it up, what's the last thing I want to ask you is, like, what do you think needs to be said that's not being said enough around menopause? What's the last thing you'd want to leave people with?
I think what I tend to say to most of my community members, and I haven't thought this through because I didn't know you were going to ask.
Sorry, I've thrown you a curveball here, but
you have thrown me a curveball. But
go with the first. I always think in this, the first thing that comes to mind is the best thing.
Comes into your head. Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that comes into my head is, and I say this a lot, is there is always a way. So there's always a way. So when women come to me and say, oh, I've tried everything, this HRT doesn't work for me, and I can't do this and I can't do that, I've not yet met a woman who can't be helped by making some small changes. And that doesn't necessarily have to be HRT. It usually is. But even just making some small changes, there is always a way to make an improvement, and don't let anybody tell you different.
I don't think you needed preparing for that. That was awesome. So Jane, thank you so much for joining me today and making the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob.
If you're fed up with trying everything and seeing no results,
watching your weight creeping up and struggling to fit into your clothes,
and you're looking for the fastest and easiest way to get your ideal weight
and never have to worry about your weight or health again,
you can save yourself years of trial and error by letting us take care of the hard work for you in our Fit Over 40 private coaching program.
Over the past decade, our world-class team have personally guided more than 7,000 women to take back control of their health and confidence, and more importantly, maintain those results for life.
If you're ready to finally get results at last and find out how we can help you do that too, click the link in the description below to get the full details now.